All right, folks, I'm going to be recording the Module 6 assignment solution here, and I just want to review very quickly what is included in that. So read the instructions here. Create a program to simulate a vending machine. It should have a class called item. The item should have fields that store the name, the quantity, and the price per unit. The main program should use a list item to store the inventory in the vending machine. And at program start, the user should be able to fill the vending machine with items to vend. When they are done filling the machine, the program allows the users to purchase from the machine. When they're done purchasing, the program should print out the inventory remaining in the vending machine. It should also print out the amount of money the machine collected from item sales. And you can see here on the screen a sample program run. There's only one little issue I'm going to address here. We picked up in class that it looks like they're prompting to type in a -1 to end, but we're typing in NA to end. So I'm probably just going to change that to NA, probably the easiest solution since it matches up what we've done so far. All right, let's dig into creating this. So I have my Visual Studio up and running. I am going to create a new project here, console app. Let's name it Vending Machine, or if you want, you could name it Module 6 assignment, perhaps. In fact, I think I'm going to do that just so I can find it later. My part, Module 6 assignment. Now for this, I do want the box checked on this one, so I'm leaving that checked. I'm going to create. Now I am starting out right away with the program file where I'm going to run and steer the program from and do most of the work. But I think that from reading the instructions, it was pretty clear that it was probably a good idea, to kind of to match with our contents, that we create a class file that will hold the items, or be the object or the blueprint for creating items for the vending machine. So I'm going to come back over here to the side and I'm going to add an item. I'm just going to call it item. Since this is going to be a non-executing program, I do not need using statements at the top. And I'm going to change the internal accessor here to public so that it can be accessed by other parts of the program. Inside here, I'm going to begin by creating 3 private data fields. As indicated in the instructions, we have name, quantity, and price. You know what? I will zoom in a little bit. I think you guys might not be able to see that too well. And then I'm going to include a constructor function. That constructor will look like this. And you can see that we're feeding in name, quantity, and price, and then feeding them into the private variables. We are going to need some additional methods in here, so I'm going to add a little space and drop a few in. At some point, it's probably helpful to get the name of the item, so let's add in that capability. We'll put in the get name. And since we're doing that, it's probably not a bad idea, since people are going to be stocking the vending machine, to allow them to set the name. Once again, that one will actually accept a string and then apply it. This one's just going to return the value. We also want to be able to do the same thing with quantity. So we want to be able to retrieve the quantity. And then we also want to be able to set that quantity as well. Set. As you might already guess, we're going to do the same thing with price. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and do both of those at the same time. So we're going to be able to get the price, and then we'll be able to set the price as well. One other capability I'm going to add here is the ability to print the item. In other words, to show the item on the screen and its price, which was one of the, it's going to appear as an electronic menu item for us, but the conception here is to be able to see what that item is and display it for sale. Here's the item, here's how much it costs. All right, so I'm going to just kind of quickly zoom out on this, see if I can fit it all on screen at the same time. Maybe that's a little ambitious, but there it is. That's kind of small. All right, so that completes this file. This is the blueprint, of course, for the vending machine that we're going to build over here. In the main program file, we are going to get rid of this default code here, and we are going to create, inside the main method, we're going to create a list containing items, right? And so it's going to draw from the class file, and we're going to name it items so that it makes sense as we're referring to it. And then we're also going to declare a string variable here that we're going to use as part of our logic as well. The next thing that we're going to do is very similar to the module 6 lab. We're going to use a do loop to kind of do the prompting and make sure that we get all the information inputted into the vending machine. And it's really almost identical to what we did. So this should go pretty quick. So for most of you, you might be able to copy and paste from that original program if you're not, unless you want to type this in, whatever. So first we're going to list the item that we want to stock in the vending machine. If they happen to type NA, we need to kind of accommodate for that. So let's set up an if statement to do that. So if they don't type NA, let's then prompt them first for the price, or excuse me, the quantity. Quantity comes first. And I do want you to notice I'm using this technique here, the try parse technique, where in this case, we're looking for an integer. So we try to parse it from the read line. And then if it's valid, we will output it to the variable called quantity, right? And we're declaring it here in this spot. Now, I might, argue that maybe it's a better idea to put it up here. But you know what? It's okay here as well. Next, we're going to prompt them for the price of the item that you're putting in the vending machine. So what it's going to sell for. This one's going to be a double because we're dealing with money. Then we will add that to the items list. List of items is maybe a better way to say it. Right? Just using the add command that travels with the list. Now our do loop is not complete. We want to add the closing while here, and the criteria will be not what it's auto suggesting there, that's for sure. It will be this. So as long as they, type NA, then they're out. Otherwise, the loop keeps going. If you look at the example output, there's a couple of write lines that happen next. So we will get that little ASCII art in there and then list it as a vending machine, give it a little bit of a title. I'm also going to set a counter variable. So I'm just going to say int count equals 1. And then what would be good is to output those items. So in other words, we're going to output, the list of items that are in the vending machine right now, because how else are they going to choose them to purchase them? For that, I'm going to use a for each loop. That's the logical one to use here. So for every item in items, we will output, first we will output the counter and then increment it. So in other words, what we're trying to achieve basically is a numbered inventory list. So it will start at the number one. That's the purpose of that. And then we will list the item by calling the print item method that's within it. And if you recall, if you look at that, that will, it's at the bottom here, just give you the name and the price, which once again ties us back to this. So it's going to give us the name and the price. So back over to the program then. Now we are going to be, putting this list up there, and then they're going to be choosing something. So we need to have an input variable to thing to hold the input that they're going to give us. And then there's also going to be, we're also going to be keeping track of the total sales. So we need variables for both of those things. So let's add those. So here are those variables. So we have a string for the input and another one for the total, which will start at 0. Next, we're going to set up another do loop. And we'll do our initial prompt here. So we want them to type in the number of the item, so for 1 for Snickers, 2 for trail mix, for example. And then same kind of logic we used before, we're going to check to see if they type NA. And if they do, well, we'll skip over this, but if they don't, then first, we'll drop in this little bit of code here. So we're going to grab that input. We're going to make sure it's converted to an integer and store it in index. Now, that's going to be used, if you're wondering, it's going to be used to access the items from the list from the position that we wish, right? So let's say they, for example, it's a good time to point this out. If they type in the number 2, right, its position in the list is 0. This Snickers is 0 and trail mix is 1. So we have to subtract 1 from that number to make it correct, basically. That's the why. Then we can use our list syntax to access that item in that position and set the quantity based upon this little bit. So this is kind of gets a little deep. So in other words, we're reading the item's index, we're getting the quantity, we're subtracting 1, and then using that to set the quantity for the current index value, if you follow all that. All right, but that's the logic for it. And then ultimately, because we're also keeping track, we're going to add to the total, right? And so basically, all right, to just kind of review all this. So this is a little weird perhaps, but this is to get us to point to the right index position in the list. Once we have the right index position, when we're in that index position, we will go into that position, get the quantity that we currently have and subtract 1. Because why? Because they bought 1. And I don't think I said that before, right? So they are buying 1, so we're subtracting it, and then we're using the set quantity method to adjust the quantity. And I think this is really clever in programming. We get the quantity it currently is now, we subtract 1 from it, and then set the quantity back to itself, right? And if you're wondering, yeah, that was, we get the quantity here, but we're also setting the quantity as well. But we did set up those stipulations here. All right, so now that that part's done, the while loop's basically complete. So let's close it out. Let's put in the while, and then our criteria, which is basically the same criteria we used here, right? No, we called it input here, so I'll copy it from my other window. So there you go. And now that we're done here, now we need to finish off our ASCII art. So there's the closing hash marks or whatever. And then we're also going to put up on screen just a little title here. Oops. Show the inventory in the vending machine. And then in order to actually get that on screen, we're going to do that with a for loop. Here's the for loop. And it's a for each actually. So once again, for each item in items, we'll get the quantity from the item itself, get the name from the item itself. And so in other words, if you're looking at this, right? So how many are left and the item that it is. Right? And then finally, once that loop completes, then we can output the total that we calculated here. Put that on the screen as well. All right, so what I'm going to do now is the program is basically complete. I'm going to move the sample run over to my other screen. I'm going to mimic it precisely to show you that it does work. But if you're looking to capture all the code, here's the top part of the code up through line 30. So take your screenshots, right? And then the bottom part of the code so you can see the rest, right? Here comes the run. All right, so we're going to mimic exactly what the example was. You got to spell it right. Snickers. And we're going to put 12 of those in. And those are going to be $1.7575. And then we're going to put in trail mix. And those. And the price each is $1.55. Of course, I have to add one more item here. We're going to put in some M&Ms. And we'll put in 12 of those. And the price of those is also $1.75. And then we'll type NA. And there's our vending machine with the list. All right. And so now it's asking item to buy. And so I'm going to type in one Snickers, trail mix, M&Ms. I'll just do that a couple times. Type in A to end. And there's our inventory. And is that correct? It is. So it worked correctly. And there's the completion of that program. All right. I hope you have good luck with that one. And if you need help, of course, reach out. Take care.